Hi guys, Deanne here from Canada Abroad, and thanks so much for tuning in. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about language tests and potentially changes to language tests for certain immigration applications going forward. So from an access to information request that Stephen Morans did, and he shared it on Twitter. If you want to see the full tweets, I've provided the link below to his account. He's always sharing access to information requests. So what these are is the government doesn't always release their internal memos where they're communicating with each other. And Canadian citizens and permanent residents were allowed to request this information. So, lots of representatives such as ourselves and him, they're always requesting this information. And then as it's released, you share it, you disclose what you found. Problem is, a lot of these documents, when we get them, are redacted. So sometimes not all of the information is there. They redact important key parts because they want to keep them secret until they disclose it to the public. So we're gonna break down what we know about these changes to the language test and what we can expect. So what I liked about this memo was they finally, are looking at making changes, because so many people that I speak to, they're, like from the UK or Ireland or the United States, where English is the first language. And if you've ever taken the IELTS test, it's run by the British Council. This is British English because that's what Canada is using. So people who grew up in a country where English is the first language, the schooling is English, they always ask me, why do I need to pay so much money to do a language test? My degree is in English, that should be good enough for the government. But unfortunately, they say, obviously, to be clear and transparent, everybody has to do the same test so that everyone is evaluated against the same criteria, which makes sense, but it is an expensive test, and for some people it just doesn't make sense. So I completely see both sides. So what they're talking about in this memo is that they need to look at reevaluating how things are assessed, like CLB levels, because not every test is always gonna be the same. So if you get a CLB 9 on one language test, that might necessarily be the same marks that you would need for a CLB 9 on another test. And what I mean by that is maybe one test is actually easier. So somebody is able to do that test and access it in their country, they can get a higher CLB level than somebody who unfortunately is stuck only taking the other test. And I've seen that with applicants. Like if I'm looking at people who have written the IELTS and the CELPIP, they find the CELPIP easier than the IELTS. Don't know why, that's just the preference that I've seen. And also, depending on what country you're writing it in, sometimes there's been scams going on that people were purposely marking the test lower so that you'd have to pay to do it again. These things happen, unfortunately. So a lot of people have always complained about the language test, so at least we are going to see some changes. Now, one of the things they have talked about, and it's redacted so we don't know exactly what test or agency it's going to be, but appears they are going to be adding a new service provider that you can do the English test for. So this is great news, because the problem that I've seen is, depending what country you're in, you only have the IELTS, that's it. And that's why I say in some countries, this may be turned into a bit of a money-making scheme for some people running the test. Other countries, you have the choice between the CELPIP and the IELTS, but that was very limited. So if they're gonna pick a service provider that is operating in a lot more countries, this is great for international applicants, so people not in Canada, because they'll actually have a second choice. They don't have to just do the IELTS. There isn't this monopoly on the English test. So obviously, once we know more about who this is going to be, we'll let you know. They don't want to release it right now because they're working out all the contract details with them. And obviously they don't want people rushing to go do the English test until all of that is sorted out and it's officially announced that you can use that language test for the different immigration programs. So, if you need the IELTS or the CELPIP to get into the pool now, go ahead and do it. This is not going to be something that's going to be happening right now. It's going to be in the new year, but it's just so you know it's coming. So maybe if you're one of those people that has tried the IELTS 3 times and it hasn't gone well for you, maybe in the new year you're going to have a different option that you can try this new test. Another part of the memo says the department is also exploring several new policy initiatives that will likely impact the language testing landscape. And then it's all redacted. So we don't know what those are, but they do say that they would like to try and get decisions on those policy proposals in the next 12 months. So again, nothing right now. The new test should be available or announced early to mid 2023, but then any policy changes, I mean, we might only see those in 2024, unfortunately. Then they have a chart where they sort of break down what is going to be happening going forward and how they're going to lay out their timelines. So they've said in the next 3 to 6 months, they're going to finalize that service level agreement with the new test provider, and then they're going to start implementing, changes to their own systems to account for this new language test, because they're going to have to update all of the portals to allow you to select this new test. So that things like that are going to take time to implement. Then they've got summer to fall 2022 redacted. So we don't know what's going on there. Fall and winter of 2022, this is where they're going to start looking at the CLB levels a bit more. They need to do research, they say, on the levels to ensure that all approved language tests and the levels are constructed, are equivalent, and their level of difficulty and test purpose. So again, making sure whether you do the IELTS, the CELPIP, or this new test, that a CLB 9 on any of them is consistent, right? That one's not easier, one's not more difficult, so that you're not being disadvantaged if you're in a country where you only have one option. And then ongoing, they're going to be seeing if there's interest for any new French test providers. Right now there's 2. They say that those 2 providers have more than enough availability for people looking to do the French test. So they're just going to have discussions to see if there is anybody else who's interested. They might bring on another service provider for the French test as well in the future. So all we know right now is there is going to be a new option for the English test in 2023. We don't know who it is yet. The government does, obviously, but they've redacted it because, again, they don't want a mad rush before it's formally announced, because they are still going through all the contract details. Things could fall through, that service provider could change if they don't make any agreements. So we'll just have to sit and wait. I'm not going to speculate. I mean, obviously, if we look at other English-speaking countries that people immigrate to, like Australia, they have other tests that they allow that Canada doesn't. Maybe they're going to allow the same one. We don't really know, and I don't want to speculate because I don't want you to go out and do those tests thinking it's going to be okay, and then it's a different service provider. So right now, like I said, if you need to get into Express Entry, do the general IELTS or CELPIP. If you have done those and it's not going well, or you're in the system and you want to improve your score with a new language test, and you know that it's not going to work out with the IELTS or the CELPIP, then wait and see what this new test is. Maybe there's going to be that different option for you to try and hopefully bring up your score in the new year. So thank you guys, as always, for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with all the latest Canadian immigration news and updates.